Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on Perspectives. Today, we learn what parents can do to start conversations with their kids about gangs, and most importantly, how to prevent them from joining gangs. Well, the first question that a lot of us may ask is, why are our youth joining gangs today? Now, according to youth.gov, research says that youth join gangs for protection, a sense of identity, respect, money, enjoyment, or because a friend is in a gang. If youth engage in delinquent behavior or aggressive or violent, they have multiple caretakers or an unstable or broken home, they are at a higher risk of joining a gang. And if they have a lot of problems at school and live in communities where they don't feel safe, they're more likely to be in a gang. The most common age that children join gangs now is 15. The early adolescent years of 12 to 14, some research says, is a crucial time when many of them are exposed to gangs and may consider joining. Sadly, some children are exploited as early as 11 and are vulnerable enough to be used. Youth gang membership varies by state and locality, but surveys samples of urban youth indicate that from 14 to 30% of American youth join gangs at some point. Unfortunately, also according to youth.gov research now, no programs have been developed to successfully prevent gangs from emerging. So the challenge is, how do we prevent our youth from joining gangs? Our guest today, Mobile Police Commander Curtis Graves, Office of Strategic Initiatives with the Mobile Police Department, and Commander Kevin Levy, Director of Intelligence for the MPD's Gulf Coast Technology Center. Well, after a quick break this morning, we'll talk with our guests, Commander Graves and Commander Levy, about gangs and how parents, families, and law enforcement can work together to provide solutions on how to interrupt gang activity and gang influence in our community. And welcome back to Perspectives. Today, our very special guests, Commander Kevin Levy and Commander Curtis Graves. And we're talking about gangs, and you've got an event coming up here shortly that will be set to put in place ways to help parents work better with law enforcement and the community. So we'll talk about that within the program. But right now, let's start out talking about gangs and get us a perspective of what we have here. A lot of times, some people think about gangs being the Crips and the Bloods and that perspective, but in this case, we're talking about some of the basic community type gangs that many of us heard about per se growing up, and then some of us saw it growing up as well. Give us a sort of an overview of what we have here in the area that you all as the MPD are concerned about.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for giving us an opportunity to have this conversation. We feel the greatest effort that we can put forward regarding gang prevention is actually having the conversation, and so this is a great step in that direction. As far as what we see in our community, and it's very similar actually along the Gulf Coast in other communities as well, and we do communicate with our neighboring agencies. What you have are young adolescents for the most part who are seeking to gather with each other and breaking all of the norms and the rules of society in search of a feeling of position and authority. And that really goes to the crux of what we consider to be a four corners approach, and it starts with family and or starts with faith actually, and it goes to family and education and government. And when those things are sort of subtracted from the equation, there's a lack of having something greater than yourself, or the family doesn't look the way it used to, or there's a lack of the family altogether. You know, how do we come together with our community and stand in the gap? And that's really what this conversation was about when we first started addressing this gang problem that we see here. And our job is not to judge people for where they stand, but to figure out the way that we can come alongside them and guide them along the right path.
Exactly. I heard someone talking about that recently, where let's not deal with the past, but let's take it from this point forward and where we're trying to move. Now, Commander Graves, you've been in law enforcement now for how many years?
31 years total.
So you've seen some things, and I'm sure you've seen the sort of maybe evolution of the youth and the community. How do you see it today as relates to the changes that have happened when you look at the youth and gang activity?
Kevin hit on something important, family. Family and faith, actually. What we're seeing now more so than ever before is the fraction of that. The fracture of it. We see more variations of what that used to look like, and it's distorted. There are a lot of fatherless homes. actually some motherless homes, and a lot of youth are being raised by grandparents.
Right.
And we know how grandparents are. In their best efforts, they're still grandparents. And they don't give youth that same level of discipline that parents, by design, give youth. And some of those things are a contributing factor to what we see today, but it's not just that. There's so many issues, so many variations that we look at today as opposed to what we used to see in family structure that is changing the dynamics of what we deal with today with youth.
And as law enforcement, you target some of your technology now, like the shot spotter and other systems that you have in place to hopefully get a advance notice of something about to happen so you can be there to police it. With gangs, are you able to recognize certain areas of the community, or is this a problem that we've got in every community, so to speak?
Yes, and you know, as far as using technology to sort of be a targeting, technology is actually mostly used in sort of a detection phase, where we really believe our greatest success is going to come, and where law enforcement has sort of lacked having the conversation. And we've had all kinds of prevention efforts, but in gang prevention, really tackling the piece long before you get to a detection, that's where the strategy goes. And as far as you know, a particular area, there is no zip code that defines whether or not you're in a gang. There is no, I grew up in this house, so I'm in a gang or I'm not in a gang. You know, it used to be regional, and now gang association is just that, it's by association. And our efforts have to target the warning signs and the early warning signs, not the house or the car. And so what we have to look at is there a troubled youth? Are there warning signs in school? Is there a lack of school? What are the work habits? Do they have a means of income? And all of these things force society to make requests of what people think it requires them to be part of society, and that's misguided too. And so part of this whole event that we want to host down the road is really to bring awareness to the parents, because we have to redesign, not just reimagine, but we have to redesign all four corners of society that have sort of fractured, as Commander Graves said, specifically the faith and the family piece, because we have to see that there's something greater than ourselves, whatever that is that you believe. And we also have to bring the family, no matter what that looks like, into a position to have the authority, so that the child doesn't seek a position or authority in the community that is associated with rule breaking instead of rule following.
And that's the things that the gangs provide. In the research that I shared, we talked about being exploited as young as 11. Is that happening in our area? Do you all see people that young being?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that it may be even younger than that, actually. I think that when we have youth who are oftentimes unsupervised, and sometimes in our best efforts, as I pointed out earlier with grandparents, there's just a miss with technology being what it is today, and Kevin can really speak to the heart of that. But these things have taken the place of guidance and direction, and now we have people who are online that they're becoming affiliated with, as well as those who they may have engagement with or interaction with in school or in the neighborhood, because most parents are working parents, okay? Nowadays, grandparents are still working, and the kids are left to attend to themselves, unsupervised, raise themselves. So a lot of these different things that we're seeing today are a little different than what it used to be when Kevin or I or even you, I mean all of us actually, I say even you, Eric.
Oh yeah.
No,
Put me in the group, that's fine.
Even though you're just as young as we are. But the reality is that a lot of issues are happening today that we just didn't see, nor did we imagine years ago.
Yeah.
And here we are today trying to figure out what to do next.
Operation Echo Stop, sort of the, I guess, umbrella over what's taking place here and what you want to do. Did you see this as you were evaluating some of the things that you've been learning over the course of the last 2 or 3 years through Operation Echo Stop, when you're targeting communities and looking to help, because you guys look at it holistically, as you said earlier. Did you see this as another area that we need to put emphasis on?
So a couple of things real quick, if I could say. Operation Echo Stop is the tool or the instrument that we use to get out, to be honest with you, perfectly the same reason that I and Commander Graves came here, what has been on our heart. Because it's kind of a twist of two worlds, if you can imagine. You know, I'm a parent, I have children. I seek to learn the story of how people get into position of these scenarios, and then I attempt to use the tools that we have at our disposal, not to find somebody guilty of a crime. That happens sometimes, but how do we prevent that situation from ever arising? And I'll just speak for even a brief second on the whole age discussion. That social media device, which is a phone, it's an iPad, it's a laptop, it's whatever, it brought a youthful access to an age group that never had that youthful access. And what used to be a 19 to 24-year-old violent crime streak of assault has changed to a 13 to 16-year-old, because when you have a device in front of you, it gives you the opportunity to think that you need something, and also to want to control what you do with it. And that need to want and that control desire is what's leading to finding a place in society, and that society isn't the community at large. It could just be your subgroup of friends. And so, you know, really the conversation we've been having is, you know, who are your friends? And why are you associating with them? And if you feel like you need to control that situation, then you're taking the organic process of what a normal conversation relationship is, and you're turning it into this thing that's forced, and then there becomes the competition, and that becomes, I have to have money, I need this fancy whatever, and then also I want to control the environment. And then the parents who do try to intervene oftentimes become the restrictor, and now there's this battle at home. And so this is really where we want to have this discussion with the whole family.
Right.
We're going to take a break at this point, and when we come back, we're going to talk more about this, as well as what's coming up to help parents be a part of the solution. And of course, that social media piece that can be such a valuable tool for parents, but at the same time, it's one that you got to stay on top of. We'll talk more about that. Our very special two guests here, Commander Levy and Commander Graves, as we talk more about gangs and youth involvement in our community. Perspectives continues in just a moment. We're talking about gang awareness and prevention. Our very two special guests this morning, Commander Kevin Levy and Commander Curtis Graves from Mobile Police Department. We've got an upcoming event, a town hall meeting, in fact, for parents to help them be a part of solving this problem. We talked about the age as far as the youth. Who seems to be, and how old do they seem to be, of the people who are sort of running the gang, who are the gang leaders?
You know, I think it varies. I think that it depends on the community and the dynamics at play as it relates to the group, the youth, the age, or the if they're middle school, for example, it could be a sixth grader who has influence over a seventh and eighth grader.
Are we seeing gangs that young, middle school gangs?
Absolutely. Anybody is susceptible to the target, and I want to make sure that our audience and our viewers and our parents that come to these events understand that gangs are not organized the traditional way that we think.
Right.
There's not necessarily a hierarchy of an individual who's making command decisions and running the troops. You said something super interesting when you said influence. The competition for influence is also the pitfall, why we have gangs, and then those gangs split, and then those gangs split. And so the association and who has more influence, and social media provides a tool for positive influence, but also a tool for negative influence.
Right.
And that's where the danger comes in, because not that any gang is better than another, but when you have a hierarchical structure and people say, okay, well, I report to this person, there's sort of a respect for that. What happens on the street that we're seeing with the youth, especially in these gangs, and we can have a whole other conversation about the adolescent age and their strategy of their mind at the moment. But the reality of it is they're competing for influence, and when there's a competition for influence and someone sort of disses them or throws something out that kind of reduces their influence or calls them out, that's where the conflict comes in. Those are turning, unfortunately, deadly violent, and that's what we're really trying to intervene with.
And when you mention social media, you know, I have been extremely disappointed to hear about some of the challenges on some of the different social media platforms that are just, you know, extremely anti-society, negative as far as when we look at morality and other things. And these are things that people are, oh, okay, I'm going to do this. And so that is a terrible contributing factor.
It's always playing a very negative influence on our youth, because they're inundated with information. You know, there's so much information on social media. and they're trying to find ways of recognizing themselves in these things that they see. They're trying to associate, trying to find where they fit in a lot of these things. And unfortunately, when they look to be part of gangs, they're trying to find acceptance. They're trying to find something that they're missing in relationship, or they're trying to overcome some type of feeling that they may have that's a deficit. They may feel like, you know, they're being bullied just far too often by someone, and they may try to find ways of actually connecting with someone or a group that empowers them.
So when you say that these are some of the things that you're seeing now, is it to where they've gotten to the violence standpoint or level, or we're seeing more of just the organizing and the...
Well, here's the scary part. Violence happens when the perpetrator of the violence decides that it's time to commit the violence. And so if you and I are associated, and we may not be at the level where we feel like we're going to resolve our conflict that way, but either somebody in our close proximity decides to, or worse yet, somebody in another group or gang decides it's time, then we've been drawn into this violent situation long before we've ever even thought that or had that cross our minds. And now we are seeing, witnessing, experiencing violent behavior, and that has two things that really come from that. The very first thing is you're now involved in a violent situation, which could lead to your death, it could lead to your incarceration, it could lead to you witnessing and being part of things, which brings about the second piece, which is now you're also a victim of some sort of trauma, right? And so here you are in this torn world of complicated decision making and how you're going to resolve conflicts, and we make it so simple because it's a us against them mentality. And this happens not just because of your behavior, and this is what we want parents to know. Your child may never have that thought, but if your child is in the wrong time in the wrong place with people who have had that thought, they could be increasing the risk of a violent situation significantly.
My goodness.
I think what we miss often is that parenting's not easy. It's a
We
job.
all know that, right?
It's a very, it's a very busy job. It requires you to constantly practice being a good parent and not just rest on your laurels and just think that you can just continue to do things and think that nothing changes, that you are a good parent. I know I'm a good parent and I don't need to do anything else. No, I have to practice being a good parent. I have to engage my child. I have to talk to them regularly. I have to know what they're doing inside of their bedroom. I have to know what they're doing on social media.
Yes.
I have to understand social media. I need to know how to operate platforms. There's so many things. It's not easy. So we don't sit here and say, hey, you should be doing this, this, and this. We know that it's difficult, but it is really, really necessary for you to try to be the best parent that you can be for your child.
Yeah, it's a much harder job than our parents had because of the social media and the technology aspect, because that's a whole other job, monitoring what they're doing on social media. And I remember when my kids were growing up, we were dealing with just beginning of texting and that type of thing. And so that opened the door to a lot of things that we as parents have to address, and it's not an easy job. And
No.
I think it's more complicated today, and especially if the parent is working 2 jobs or 2.5 jobs trying to make ends meet, and they need every precious moment of sleep that they can get. Well, let's tie this into what's going to take place. You've got 2 town hall meetings to bring parents and law enforcement and the community together to, hey, let's work together to bring about change. What are you hoping to see come out of these 2 town hall meetings?
We want to bring awareness, and we want parents to take their parenting back. You know, you mentioned parenting in one generation versus another. You know, when you have right and wrong and you can discern that right and wrong, that's different than inviting 100 million other parents into your household, which is what that little cell phone does. And so you have a lot of other opinions. And so what we want to do is have a real conversation at these town hall meetings on November 7th and November 14th. The first one is at Bishop State Technology Business Center. The second one is at Dayspring Baptist Church. And we want to bring parents.
That's on Cody Road?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And we want to bring parents out to have a real conversation. We'll have some information. We're bringing some experts onto this platform. We'll present them with the information, and there'll be time for some questions and answers. So there's no reason not to get involved. We understand there's other times. That's why we're doing 2 different opportunities, and we would love to draw from all across our communities, whoever may be interested, to come and see, so we can begin the dialogue. And from there, we'll gauge the interest and we'll move forward as we can. And we're willing to do as much as we can to get the word out.
We're hoping that this will yield a lot of attention in terms of people being present to hear this valuable information, because I think Kevin and I both are really hoping that this creates a platform for us to continue having these conversations with families about things that they may not know, so that they can actually do those things that we need them to do, so that we don't have to engage with their youth in a way in which none of us want.
Yeah, prevention is the key, and of course you will be able to equip them with things that they may not know or hadn't even thought about yet. And then of course, so busy in the grand scheme of making a living daily, they just hadn't gotten to that page yet.
Right.
So that is so critical. Well, we of course hope that the parents who are getting this information today will make a move on it, because you can pre-register, and you can pre-register your questions as well, right?
Yeah, so there's several things where they're posted online and on the PD website and other places where you can go ahead and get more information, contribute information, and we're certainly going to take questions there. We'll have different platforms and opportunities to do that. So, you know, the hardest thing is make yourself available and be there. Let's just have a real conversation. And here's the thing: we're not asking you to do anything we're not doing ourselves. We want to come alongside you and do it together. But let's change the course of where we're going in our community when it comes to our kids and youth gangs, because we cannot sit back and watch what's happening now.
Let that be the final word, Commander Kevin Levy and Commander Curtis Graves. We thank you both so much for coming and sharing this, and hopefully this will be a part of getting folks out. Now, those dates again, as mentioned, Tuesday, November 7th from 6:30 until 7:30. And that's at the Bishop State Community College, the new, I think, Business Technology Center there. And that's at Broad Street in downtown Mobile. And then Tuesday, November 14th from 6:30 until 7:30 at Dayspring Baptist Church. That's at 2200 Cody Road in West Mobile. Definitely two locations in different parts of the city to make it convenient. And you can also email questions to echostoplive@gmail.com. Well, we thank you for joining us today on Perspectives. Of course, we've got more information for you available on all of our social media platforms, as well as previous programs too. Until next time, I'm Eric Reynolds, and you have a great week ahead.